So I'm trying a different thing. It's going to go ahead and record for me. So yeah, so Benjamin's in and a couple of people. So I just wanted to kind of go over some of the notes that I'd taken at the security event, Roadshow, Amazon thing on Tuesday, November 3rd. I got their slide deck, and I probably won't roll through them really, because just want to take a minute, and I haven't thought through it too much what I might share, but just from my notes, they re-emphasized securing your root account first of all. This is really kind of notes from, I guess, the network security and access controls within AWS session. There were 4 sessions, AWS Security Overview and What's New, which I missed. The one I just mentioned. Also, the third one is protecting your data in AWS, and then putting it all together, securing systems at cloud scale. The last one, the guy got into DevSecOps, coining a new term, what I thought was a new term, and DevOps is muddy enough. I think the idea is, his idea was consistent with just DevOps, just get everybody involved, including security folks, and make sure that they're part of the process for your code deployments. There's ways to do cross-account permissions and kind of federation tied into your Active Directory or whatever, if you have that. CloudTrail, we should enable it for all regions, or turn it on so you can see what's going on, who's making API calls and when. That way, he said, do the root, finally secure your root credentials last. After you've created nice IAM rules for everything, don't end up locking yourself out by disabling your root credentials. Watch that CloudTrail log and see if there's any stragglers that are not converted to the new IAM rules that you've made. So roles in IAM, like your roles are more like service accounts. Everything in Amazon is secure by default, according to him, which in most cases that's true. Like for an IAM user, they can't even change their own password unless you've given them that privilege. So in your IAM policies, there's kind of an acronym, PARC, P-A-R-C, which kind of helps you remember all the things that you'll need to set in your policy. First, a principle, who's going to be doing this thing. Action, what are they going to be doing? A resource, which resource are they acting on, and then any conditions. Maybe some qualifier that further limits and restricts that policy. So managed policies is a term for the new way of doing things. There are Amazon managed or AWS managed policies, and then there's policies that you create, user managed policies. And those can be attached to multiple users. There's inline policies also, which you would attach directly to an individual user. And I'm stepping away from the thing, close my door. So inline policies, as you can imagine, are like inline scripts or CSS. It's kind of can get ugly and unwieldy. There's resource-based policies on your S3 buckets, SQS, and other services. I thought this was cool. So they have required tags. I tried to write down everything, so I'm not just learning each and every one of these things, but I guess I did learn about required tags. So you can report on instances that don't have certain tags applied. Like if you want to make sure that every resource has a name, so that, or maybe a project, for example, so you can kind of do some cost analysis and see how much an entire project costs, then you can be sure that each one has one by running this report. It's not going to stop the resource from cranking up and running, but this report will tell you which things don't have that, so you can go modify your configs and scripts to get it going. They say always use the CloudFront CDN. Expose the site only through the CloudFront and use their Web Application Firewall. I believe that Web Application Firewall is a new feature that they released at the reInvent. But yeah, they stress that it's a much more powerful way to control access to your sites and resources. Use security groups. In your security groups, rather than specifying IP addresses as the source, use other security groups as the source where possible. They talked about network access control lists, or NACLs, or ACLs. They're not good at allowing traffic. That's what security groups are for. They're stateless, kind of like a firewall, old school firewall. They said that they're great at denying traffic, although I ran into a limit the other day where network access control lists, you can only have one access control list tied to any given subnet, and those control lists are limited to 20 rules, and then you can bump that limit up to 40 rules, but it seems so weak to me, so I called them out on it, and then I even submitted a ticket to support, and they replied back that, oh yeah, you could do that, plus you can go in and create IP tables rules. And so I was very disappointed that their response was get into IP tables on each and every one of your guest machines. Surely that can't be the answer. So sorry, I'm going a little long here, but I'm going to just keep on rolling through. So use NAT instances for private subnets, and then use the AWS NAT AMI or others from the marketplace to provide kind of gateways to the internet for those private subnets so that they can get updates and whatnot. But where possible, put them in a private subnet that's not even accessible to the internet. VPC endpoints, they have no internet gateway. They're free. There's no NAT on those. They talked about something I don't quite understand yet, about creating an S3 VPC endpoint, and then you can use prefix lists to kind of grant privileges to the S3 VPC endpoint. Normally S3 is accessible by the public internet only. You have to go through your gateway. But now you can access S3 from private networks through these S3 VPC endpoints. There's 4 gates to get to your stuff. You got your routing tables, your security groups with prefixes, your VPC policies, S3 bucket policies. Again, I'm sorry, I'm literally just kind of scanning my notes here. You can do VPC flow logs, and those are per ENI subnet or VPC. They can log to CloudWatch logs, and then you can create metrics and monitors on those flow logs, and it's also agentless. So you could say send a flow log group to a filter in your logs, filter the SSH reject, for example, and if you have 10 rejects in a minute or something like that, then kick off some Lambda job to do some notification or some API call or something. They also talked about key security, and So they've got SSE-C, which is a customer-provided key kind of system. And they talked a lot about their new SSE-KMS, their KMS service. Integrates with about 10 services like S3, EBS, RDS, and others. You can do server-side or client-side encryption. CloudTrail can log the usage. In S3, each object gets its own key, and then there's a master key that rules all the subservient keys, and so it can get. She claimed that that mostly securing a database was pretty cheap, whereas a bunch of S3 objects, where those S3 objects are frequently accessed, you pay per, what is it? So you pay $1 per key version, like you rotate your keys, whatever time you want, I guess, once a month or something. But then you pay 3 cents per 10,000 API calls, and your first 20,000 are free. But yeah, with S3, with a lot of different keys and accesses to those S3 objects, it can get a little pricey. There's a separate policy for encryption as opposed to decryption, so you get complicated with that if you want. The alternative to KMS is CloudHSM, dedicated hardware. It's like they set up this box there, and you manage it. There's no Amazon interface for it. It's basically a SafeNet device, and there's a one-time setup fee of $5,000, and then it's $1.88 an hour. And you might need more than one of them. You'll need at least one per VPC, if I understand right. S3, I talked about different S3 access control policies, which was cool. Cross account. All right. They talked about S3 replication. Your data won't be replicated twice. Your KMS encryption stuff, I guess the keys themselves won't be replicated, but the data is. Let's see. Your cost for replication of S3 data is your normal storage cost plus your normal inter-region transfer. The last guy that did the DevSecOps presentation, he talked a lot about just injecting those. He talked about like the ops folks owning part of a repo, or owning a repo, then the developers owning a repo, and then the security folks owning a repo, and then merging them just before deployment, kind of a thing. I didn't really love that whole idea, because it just seems like everybody can work together on one good repo. But anyways, at the end, he talked about a few ways to, there's a ready hook. Like before something goes into an ELB, there's a hook that you can run scripts on an instance before it gets, I guess, activated into the ELB, and that makes it handy for last-minute verification that things are secure. You could shove in a known good SSH key so you don't end up with a bunch of unknown keys all the time. You could, add it to your Puppet or whatever. You could just do all sorts of things just before it gets attached to the ELB. And yeah, it was a good conference. Met some good people, and a happy hour afterwards. And yeah, I would go again. So thanks a lot. I could maybe I'll pick one of these things and do a kind of a breakfast bash just on that and give it a little more thought. So thanks a lot, and we'll see y'all later. Any questions?
Nope. Thanks, Brian.
Going once, going twice, gone. All right, thanks.